Welcome to the Fretboard Journal podcast. I'm your host, Jason Verlinde, the publisher of the Fretboard Journal magazine, and today's show is with guitarist Hayden Pedigo. It's a truly great one. Trust me, folks, you are going to love this one. As I look back at 2023, we have shared a ton of memorable, sometimes unbelievable guitar stories on this podcast and in the pages of the magazine. This month alone, we had the wild stories from Guru Singh, the 60s folk musician who opened for the Dead and befriended Janis Joplin, and then checked out and became an acclaimed yogi and spiritual teacher. We had Matt Sweeney, the host of Guitar Moves, talking about the time Rick Rubin tapped him to play on the last Johnny Cash American recording albums. And we've had so many other tales, but I have to say, the story you're about to hear from Hayden Pedigo is one of the wildest I've ever heard. Hayden makes incredibly gorgeous fingerstyle guitar music. His latest record is called The Happiest Times I Ever Ignored. Please go check that out. He just did an NPR Tiny Desk concert that is up now. I was able to film him playing here in Seattle at the Fretboard Journal headquarters in our little corner. And we did this interview, and I was floored by everything I heard. I won't spoil it all, but let me just say this is a tale that involves a truck stop preacher, working as a bank teller for a decade, running for the Amarillo, Texas City Council, and eventually, with no modeling experience whatsoever, walking down the runway for the Gucci 100th anniversary fashion show. I think Hayden is probably just as much of a performance artist as he is anything else, but he happens to be an incredibly talented guitarist. He just got signed by Yamaha Guitars. This is a crazy tale, but you're going to love him and you're going to love his music. I had a blast talking to him. As always, if you love the podcast, share it with your friends on social media. It goes a long way towards helping this show grow. And if you really want to go the extra mile, you can leave us a review over on Apple Podcasts. It takes about 30 seconds to leave us a 5-star review. We also have a Patreon. If you really love us, there's a link in the show notes for that. And if you don't mind, support our sponsors too. They are Stringjoy Strings, Mike and Mike's Guitar Bar, Isotope, and Peghead Nation, which happens to be my favorite guitar instruction portal around. Stringjoy is offering you all 10% off your first order of any guitar or mandolin strings they carry with the discount code FRETBOARD. You can also use the discount code FRETBOARD to get your first month free over on Peghead Nation. If you want to be a better player, if that's one of your New Year's resolutions, Peghead Nation has you covered. No discount code, but we've got Mike Ball of Mike and Mike's Guitar Bar on next week's podcast, so stay tuned for that. Our 53rd issue of the Fretboard Journal is now mailing to everyone around the world. Ben Harper is on the cover. Joanna Sternberg's in this issue. We've got the history of the Gibson L5, so much more. It's a beautiful issue. I can't wait for you all to see it. If you're a subscriber, you're going to get it in the next week or two if you haven't already yet. The Postal Service can be slow this time of year for magazines. Everyone else, you can join us at fretboardjournal.com by clicking on the subscribe button. You can start with the Harper issue or with our next edition out in the spring, which is going to be great as well. Before we talk to Hayden, I just want to get a little sentimental here and tell you that before we wrap up 2023, I just want to thank you all for tuning in, for listening to this show, for sending me email to podcast@fretboardjournal.com, for tuning into the other podcasts that we do. I love doing these interviews. I love that they are so different from what else is out there. I love that you and I are all privy to these cool stories and inside jokes and tales that probably no one else in our community knows. It's so cool that we're able to do this. You trust me every week. You let me introduce you to all sorts of fascinating people, and I don't take it for granted. It's a very cool thing. I can't thank you enough for taking this journey with me and for supporting us. It's been a blast and will continue to be so in 2024 and beyond. We have so much fun stuff planned. And now, after all that, here is my talk with Hayden Pedigo. Again, this is a wild one. Sit down and enjoy it. Well, welcome. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, stoked to be here.
So you have, we were talking a little bit about this when you played, but like you have this sort of, you are an instrumental guitarist, but you kind of exist outside of the whatever core instrumental guitar community, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. I think A lot of that comes from not really identifying as a guitar player because I have interest in a lot of other things, be it comedy or film, or there's just a lot of things I want to do, and guitar is just one of those things. So it's kind of, because of other endeavors I've done, it's made me in some ways kind of an outsider to the maybe traditional guitar world, I guess.
You grew up in Amarillo, Texas, which, in preparation for this interview, I did a Google image search, and all you see really are the Route 66 restaurants. How many people live there roughly?
It's 200 something thousand. They haven't done a count in a while, but I bet it's 220,000 people probably.
Okay.
Around there.
And what was when did you get introduced to guitar, and then kind of, the Fahey, Kottke, whatever we want to call it, instrumental fingerstyle music?
Yeah. So I wanted to take guitar lessons when I was 11 because I was really into Stevie Ray Vaughan. That was the thing I wanted to do. And then by 12 years old, I realized that my left hand couldn't go fast enough on the fretboard to really shred. So it was kind of within 1 year of picking up the guitar, it was this crisis of I'm done. There's not really anything I can do. And then what ended up happening is I discovered Rycooter and slide playing, and I started using a slide. So that kind of reinvented how I viewed my left hand, because it wasn't so much about shredding, and it started to put the emphasis on my right hand instead. So I started getting used to playing slide. Then I discovered Little Martha by Duane Allman, the Allman Brothers Band record, and that got me into finger picking. And my mom had a Leo Kottke best of CD under the TV cabinet for some reason. I think she gave it to her dad, and I ended up listening to it, really loved the music. And then the liner notes, it mentioned John Fahey in the liner notes. And then that's how I discovered Fahey. And then Fahey was really the thing that broke my brain. I liked Kottke, but Fahey just had some grit to it. There's just something else in there. And around that time, I was really into experimental music, krautrock, tape loops, and then Fahey got thrown in there, and I just kind of went crazy on that stuff.
Are you young enough that this was all internet based, or did Amarillo have a really cool record store where you're able to find all this stuff?
So a lot of it was internet based because I ordered a bunch of John Fahey CDs online, but I was on a ton of blogs, and there was a blog called Mutant Sounds that was just nothing but experimental music. But I remember they had a download of Fahey's Fair Forward Voyagers record from '73. That's his 20-minute long pieces that are really, really crazy. And yeah, a lot of it, most of my music discovery was through the internet, being from Amarillo, because outside of the library, which had a pretty good CD collection, we didn't really have much in the way of record stores.
Yeah.
So all the internet.
What are your parents really artistic, or?
My dad's an artist, but they weren't the biggest music heads, I guess. They were my mom would play stuff like Van Morrison and Santana and stuff like that. And that definitely started my interest in music, hearing that kind of thing. But once I got into weirder stuff, I think they were slightly confused by it. And I would play Fahey, and my mom would be like, I like this stuff, but I don't like those ugly notes he plays, because Fahey would do those really dissonant notes, and she'd be like, I don't get those those dissonant, wrong notes in there. And that was my favorite thing, is I really like those sour, kind of twisted, ugly sounds that Fahey would do.
Did you have friends who were into similar music?
No, my dad was a preacher, and me and my sister were homeschooled. We lived kind of out in the country in Amarillo. So I didn't have any friends till I was 17 years old. So I was very, very isolated. So music was all I did. That was the only thing I was really doing, was listening to music and playing my guitar. That was it.
Wow. Is he still a preacher?
No, he stopped preaching at the truck stop probably 10 years ago. He preached there all through my high school years. He was a preacher at a truck stop chapel on the edge of town. It was a converted trailer that had been turned into a church.
A truck trailer?
A truck trailer that was a chapel.
Is this a common thing?
Yeah, it's an organization called Truck Stop Ministries International, and they have converted trailers at truck stops that are turned into chapels. They're planted there, the wheels are covered up with siding, and they put floor in it and a little podium. They're like little churches, and my dad would preach out there every Sunday. So it's a pretty odd thing.
And were you, as his son, like attending all the services, or was it more just for the truckers?
Oh, we would go every Sunday. We were there every week, which was, you saw a lot. I mean, it was interesting because we would meet the widest array of people, from like truckers, hitchhikers, drug addicts. Like, you would meet the widest array of people. And like, there was one Sunday when I was a kid, I was probably 13, this truck driver from Pakistan came in, and afterwards, after the sermon, he was like, "Can I come home with you and make you a lunch?" My dad was like, "Sure." So I went to our house and just looked through our fridge and freezer, like, "What do y'all have?" And he was like, "Got beef." He got orange. He was like, "Do y'all have mint?" And my dad was like, we have mint growing out back. And he like went outside and like picked mint and made like a mint orange beef dish. That was like incredible. It was insane. It was so good. But that's the kind of stuff you'd see through the truck stop. I was incredibly isolated because I didn't travel much, was just stuck in Amarillo, but did get like a small taste of like the outside world through going to that truck stop. So it was inspiring. It definitely inspired me.
Yeah. I mean, I personally live in a, like, it's outside of Seattle, but it's a rural community, and the kids seem to be pretty divided of like, this is my life, I'm going to be here forever. And then the other ones are like, get me the hell out of here after I graduate high school. Like, where were you at? Was there a decision like that? Or did you just kind of like, this is, you know, did you think about moving outside of Texas or Amarillo?
No, I didn't think about moving outside of Texas, and I'm still in Amarillo right now. I was just more interested in doing what I wanted to do artistically. And Amarillo kind of provided me a space for that because it's affordable. And because I'm not in a band, it's just me. I didn't really need to live in Austin or Nashville to do what I needed to do. And that later became more beneficial because I think being from Amarillo has given me an edge because it gives you a story. In a lot of ways, no offense, no one cares if you live in LA, Austin, or Nashville, New York. No one cares.
Yeah.
But if you tell a writer, well, I'm from Amarillo, Texas, they're kind of like, people live there? Like, what's going on there? And a lot of musicians I knew from Amarillo hated on Amarillo. Like, I can't wait to get out of here and move to Nashville and have a career. And I was more interested in finding a way to reconceptualize the idea of being a musician from Amarillo, because Lubbock had all of the good music, the Buddy Holly, Terry Allen, Waylon Jennings. Amarillo didn't. Amarillo did, for some reason, just doesn't have the same music pedigree as Lubbock. But I wanted to be the musician I would want to see from Amarillo. I just created it myself with myself because there was nothing else. So I was like, I have a blank slate. I don't have to live up to Buddy Holly or Waylon Jennings because there's not really anything to live up to because nothing's happened, you know?
All right, for those of us who haven't been to this part of Texas, like, are those two towns, which I think most people have heard of, like similar in size and like development?
Yes and no. Lubbock is 250,000, I think. Amarillo's 200,000, but the big difference is Lubbock has Texas Tech University, which it's a college town.
Yeah.
And it makes a very different dynamic between the two places, and there's always been a rivalry. Amarillo and Lubbock have always not liked each other very much. There's beef between the two.
How far apart?
They're an hour 40, probably about an hour 40
And you've
apart.
lived in both, right?
I've lived in both. My wife went to grad school at Texas Tech, so we were in Lubbock for 3 years.
Okay. But then you came back.
Then we came back, yeah. She finished grad school this year, and we came back to Amarillo because I started touring quite a bit. And Amarillo is so cheap, and we've been traveling so much that it's easy to just have an affordable place to live sometimes when you're on the road all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're not traveling, it's such a quiet place to go back to that it's actually pretty refreshing to just have pure silence. And the only thing I do there is ride my bike, send emails, or work on music. That's all I do in Amarillo, and I enjoy that. And our families are there, so that's kind of nice. So I'm not sure where we're going to live, but for now, we're just staying in Amarillo because I'm about to be touring for 3 months straight now.
It's wild.
Yeah, it's very crazy.
I mean, is there even a single venue where you would play in Amarillo?
I mean, I have a show coming up there at the Globe News Center, which is like the home of the Amarillo Symphony. And that's like a really beautiful 1,200 cap room. And I've never played there. I'm really excited about that. But there's one venue in Amarillo called the Golden Light that's solid. But yeah, Amarillo doesn't have a lot of great venues.
Yeah. So when you found Fahey's music, and was it then like singular focus, I'm going to just be fingerstyle, acoustic, get the finger picks, that kind of thing?
Yeah, I went really into it like pretty hard, but even like on my second record, I made a record called 5 Steps when I was 18. I did have people like Stefan Basho-Junghans on it, Chuck Johnson, Dan Paul Grody, like a lot of guitar players I got to collaborate with me on it. But then the B-side of the record, I had Charles Hayward of This Heat, one of the best post-punk bands. The drummer from the krautrock band Faust was on there. Fred Frith was on there. So how
did all these people connect with? How did you connect with them?
The internet. That was the thing is I was like a menace on the internet. I was just like reaching out to anyone I could, shooting emails all the time. Like, hey, this is my name. This is where I'm from. This is what I do. Would you want to make some music with me? And it was kind of like a step-by-step thing where I reached out to Charles Hayward of This Heat and he said, yeah, he connected me with Fred Frith. And that led to the drummer from Faust. It was just like a domino effect where I realized that asking can be kind of surprising, the results you can get just by asking. But my theory has always been because I was homeschooled, maybe I'm not used to like the social hierarchy that's instilled in you in public school where there's like a chain of command. You don't go to the principal and go, hey, I want chicken strips on the menu. Can we do that? It's not ingrained into you. Like if I want chicken strips on the menu to just go all the way up to the principal and ask. There's like the chain of command.
Yeah.
I never learned that because I just was homeschooled by my mom. I didn't have peers in school. It was just me and my sister. So I was maybe a bit more forward, but I did it in a polite way. I would just go to people like, hey, would you be willing to do this? And it might have seemed kind of forward, but surprisingly, people said yeah, but I think it's because they knew I was interested in making music. That was my number one goal. It wasn't really about clout or anything like that. I was interested in the sounds, experimental music, and finger-picking guitar music. But now it's like now's the time in my life where I've gone super hard into the acoustic guitar finger picking thing. Now more than any time in my past, I've like really devoted myself to improving my playing.
Yeah. So when you would reach out to like a Fred Frith, would you have a particular track in mind or part where you're like, I just want you to do this? Or was it more just like, I'm going to see if they'll even return my DM?
Yeah, I didn't have a song ready when I would reach out to them. I would just present the idea. And if they were game, I then would go home with a microphone and like smash metal together and make a racket and play some guitar and then send it to Fred Frith. And then he made his incredible sounds over it. So it was very, very free form. And those records were made in GarageBand. I borrowed a microphone from a friend, a Zoom recorder, and used GarageBand.
And did any money have to change hands between you and these artists?
There was no money. There was no contract signed. There was no record deals.
This is inspiring.
Yeah, there was nothing. It was just I put out the record and it got press. Like it got some press because it was like 19-year-old kid from Amarillo gets experimental icons on a record. And I knew things were weird because I was 19 and Vogue, the fashion magazine, wrote about the record. And I was like, this is strange. Like,
is this how the Gucci thing came? Because I was going to ask you about that.
This was years ago. This was years and years back. And it was just a weird this person to this person. I started at the very end of the blog era, the golden blog era of indie music, where press was like kind of accessible and easier to get. So I kind of lucked out at that tail end.
So someone from Vogue read the right blog.
Yes. I think the person at Vogue was a former writer for The Fader.
Okay.
And had now moved to Vogue to take on their new music department at Vogue and knew of my music through that. So it was just kind of luck, like just pure luck. But the actual fashion stuff came way later. Okay.
We'll get to that eventually. Yeah. So you're building up this following. You're clearly kind of entrepreneurial and, a go-getter. This is probably pre-Instagram. Do you have an email list or like, how are you collecting fans?
Facebook. I mean, I didn't have any kind of email list and all of my outreach was just reaching out to people on Facebook. I didn't have an Instagram yet. So it was just my Gmail account and my Facebook. And it's funny, an early memory I have is when I asked Charles Hayward of This Heat to play my record, who was a hero of mine. At the time, this email was like way defunct. But my email at the time was thisheat@clearwire.net. I was that into that band. So when Charles Hayward wrote me back on Facebook and was like, yeah, I'm willing to do a track with you. What's your email? I sent him my mom's email because I was like, I'm not sending this heat at clearwire.net to the guy in this heat, So I ended up using my mom's email because I was very embarrassed about that. And when I started my Instagram, my first Instagram handle was at this heat. Yeah. And I had that handle for 7 years. And then when this heat was reissuing their 3 albums, they made like an Instagram account to announce these reissues. And it was like This Heat Official. And I went to them and was like, hey, do y'all want At This Heat? And they're like, yeah, we would love it. So I gave them This Heat and switched my handle to Amarillo Highway. So I love the idea that I was protecting the At This Heat handle for This Heat all of those years. I was guarding it and gave it to them once they were ready for Instagram.
Man, all right. You've had quite a life. Let's talk about the most recent record, because where did you record that and what went into that? I mean, for this session, you have this like beautiful new Yamaha, but like, what did you play on that?
Yeah, so I recorded my newest album, The Happiest Times I Ever Ignored, down in Gainesville, Florida, at a studio called Pulp Arts. It's a really fantastic new studio that's only been there for 2 or 3 years, but they reached out and they said, hey, we would love if you came down and made your next record here. I was like, that would be very tight. So I flew down there because I had my material all ready to go. And over a week and a half, recorded the whole record. And the process was really cool because my friend Treyer produced it from the band 100 Waters. He's incredible. And he comes more from the very electronic experimental world. Mm-hmm. And what we did is my idea was we need to make 2 records. The first record is 100% pure solo guitar record. If we do that, then the second record is the overdubs added. Mm-hmm. It's 1 record, but the idea was you have to make 2 records to make 1 good record. It has to stand on its own as a solo record to then get the overdubs. And I got that idea from when Leo Kottke recorded 6 and 12 string guitar. He made that entire album in 3 or 4 hours. He went to the studio and said he played everything he knew front to back, chronological order, in 4 hours, and that was the record. And that was the idea I had. So we went in and the entire record was done first day in 6 hours because I just played each song within 3 takes, just the entire record. So by the end of first day, they were like, okay, record's done guitar-wise. Yeah. So the rest of the week, we just had time to flesh out with overdubs, with tape echoes, synthesizers, a giant plate reverb. So it was a fun process because they had really nice microphones. I just got that new... It's an Opus acoustic. This guy, Theo, in Australia.
Yeah, tell us about this person, because this is like, it was news to me. I had never heard of this luthier before.
Yeah, he's newer. His name is Theo Nicholas is his name. And he builds these absolutely unreal, beautiful guitars. His son had reached out to me and said his dad liked my music, wanted to build a guitar for me. And we hopped on a Zoom call, discussed guitars, like what I was looking for, discussed woods. And I told him, I was like, I don't know much about tone woods. You tell me what I'm looking for. So I described the sound I was looking for. And Theo was like, I think you need like the Adirondack top rosewood back. Okay. And I feel weird because I can't imitate an Australian accent, but it was the way he said it. He was like, the sustain drives like a truck. Like he said, the sustain drives like a truck. And I was like, that's it. I want it to drive like a truck. So the wood combo was just like, he was not kidding. I got it and the guitar was just humming. It was just ringing. You could just pick it up out of the case and just almost hear it.
Yeah.
It was like, whoa, this is an intense guitar. Most beautiful guitar I've ever played. And I got it days before I flew to the studio to make the record and record the entire record on that guitar, which was cool.
What was your guitar right before that?
I was using a fairly cheap Blue Ridge BG60 that I've been using for years. So from the Blue Ridge to that guitar, no offense to Blue Ridge, was kind of like driving a Nissan and then switching to like the newest Porsche.
Yeah.
It was just a giant jump where I felt scared of the guitar because it was like, whoa, I've never played anything like this. Yeah. I've never played a guitar like it. And I've gone into some very pricey stores and picked up, $6,000-$7,000 guitars, and nothing has matched this guitar. It's just unreal.
So cool.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And that's what you played you just did the NPR Tiny Desk concert.
Yes, I played that Opus on the first track on the Tiny Desk.
That's wild. The second day when you're doing all the overdubs and everything, did you bring gear from Texas for like pedals? Are you like into pedal that whole world? Or
no,
Okay.
I only brought my acoustic. And when it came to electrics and all of that, I borrowed their electric guitars and amps. Because even when I play live with my electric guitar, it's a Firebird into a Holy Grail reverb into a Fender amp. That's all I use. I don't use crazy pedals. So we try to keep it as natural feeling as possible. And the producer, Trayer, said his goal was it needed to feel like a solo guitar record at all times. The overdubs could not distract from the guitar. And that's what's interesting. If you listen to the record, it seems very minimal.
Yeah.
But if you really hone in on what's going on with the synths and the bass and everything, you realize it's such a densely layered record. The way he put everything in there, it's so disguised. But if you really listen in, it's like, oh, there's a lot of parts going on. But he did them all so subtle that the guitar is always at the forefront at all times.
So cool. So you're traveling through, you're opening for Devendra Banhardt tonight. And then you 3 months? Is that 3 months with Devendra?
No. So I only have 2 more shows with Devendra tonight in Seattle and then tomorrow in Vancouver.
Okay.
I have 3 shows on the way back to Texas. We're home, 4 shows on the way back to Texas. And then we're home for a couple of weeks, go to Europe for a month. I'm doing a month solo shows in Europe. Then we come home for 5 days and then another month, three weeks with Jenny Lewis again. I'm opening for Jenny Lewis because I opened for her this summer and then going back on the road with her at the end of February. So a lot of shows.
A lot of shows. And you seem to be one of those rare artists who like leapfrogged the like folky cafe circuit and went straight to playing with indie rock venues, bigger theaters. Like what's that all about? How did that happen?
So I never planned on touring. And I always said I will never tour. I worked bank jobs for nearly 10 years, 18 to 27.
Like teller?
Well, everything from teller to supervisor at a credit union. I worked my way up through banks from 18 to 27.
Okay.
So I never toured at all. I was like an office job worker who was making records at night in GarageBand and just sending emails. My career was entirely contained within Amarillo. And I swore I would never tour because I never wanted to rough it. I had no interest in doing the road dog rough tour life thing. And I was like, that won't work. Can't do that. So I signed with Mexican Summer. They're an amazing label. That was life-changing. And things really started to take off after I started working with them. Got a manager. His name's Forrest. He's absolutely fantastic. Got a booking agent for US and in Europe. But having a manager and booking agents, it immediately allowed me to do the kind of shows I wanted to do. I had kind of said, this is the kind of show I want to play. And my manager once told me a story of an ambient artist I'm not going to name that I used to manage, where she had told him, I've never played a bad show before. And he said, why is that? And she said, because I say no to everything. And I kind of took a lot from that of, it really just, you kind of set the tone for what you want to do. Because I think it really is easy for solo guitar players to get pigeonholed into crap slots or like, you're the solo guitar player. You can, open up some crap show for $150.
Yeah.
And I'm very protective on you have to set the tone for what you do. If you think your guitar playing is important enough to play a room that has 3,000 people, obviously I'm opening for Devendra, but even on those, that has allowed me to, the other night I played the Fillmore in San Francisco. It was a sold out show. And I'm like, the fact that I'm getting to do solo guitar sets in the Fillmore to a sold out show, silent audience, whether it's opening for Devendra or not, is insane. Like that's crazy for me, especially never touring before. The only legit touring I've ever done is about Jenny Lewis and Devendra. So
you must be killing it on merch.
It's been tight. It's been very cool. And Jenny and Devendra both have done so much for me. They've been major champions for my music. They're both major music heads, and they've been big supporters for what I do. So it has been very nice to feel like, whoa, I was able to luck out and kind of immediately start touring in a way that, like you said, it kind of skipped over the folk cafe route.
Totally.
A bit.
Was it a hard decision to leave the bank job?
No. Actually, what happened is when I was living in Lubbock, the story is I didn't have any new music. We had moved to Lubbock in 2020 during the pandemic. And I got a job at a credit union and I was sitting in a cubicle and a friend of mine announced that they had a new record coming out. It was guitar music on a pretty big label.
Okay.
I opened my phone and saw it, and it just pissed me off. I was jealous. I was like insanely jealous. And I snapped out of it and was just like, what am I doing? Why am I sitting in a bank cubicle right now? And I texted my wife, Hannah, and said, hey, can I quit my job and make a record? And she said, do it. So I turned in my 2 weeks notice. I quit my job. I went home and wrote Letting Go, sent it to Mexican Summer, and got signed. So that's how I left the banking world. It was very impulsive, but I'm glad I did it. And that was 2.5 years ago.
And were you already on that label's radar?
No, I wasn't. I didn't. So this is what's funny is I didn't know that label I didn't have any connection with them. And I had for years sent stuff to their demos at Mexican Summer email to like no avail, which is not surprising because those emails just get flooded. But basically what ended up happening is I was kind of desperate, and I went on Instagram and found all the people I knew that had any kind of connection with Mexican Summer.
Okay.
I was like, hey, can you like recommend me to Mexican Summer? Can you send this new record to them? And I got 10 people to do it. And then that led to a meeting with the head of Mexican Summer, Keith. And he was like, it's going to come out this year. We're going to have to do it fast. Let me do some thinking and I'll let you know. And I had to sit around for 2 weeks just nervously waiting, like, are they going to sign me? Are they going to put this record out? He called me and was like, hey, we're doing it, but we have to have artwork and masters finalized in 4 weeks. I was like, okay, let's do it. So we got everything done, mastered, put together in 4 weeks.
Was there an artist on that label that made you have that like singular focus? Or
well, I mean, I just really liked Mexican Summer's whole ethos, vibe, aesthetic, everything they did. For me, out of all of the big indie labels, they just felt really classy and sharp, and they just had cultivated a very specific thing. Mm-hmm. And I think I just felt like I want to be a part of that.
Okay.
Like I want to be a Mexican Summer artist, and I wanted it really bad. So I was really stoked to get to work with them.
Yeah. And then at some point in this journey that we're talking about, you start crushing it on Instagram, and you're like brilliant at what you do on there with videos and everything. Like, were you when you were homeschooled, were you playing with video editing already? Is that just second nature to you?
No, I'd never made videos before.
Okay.
What ended up happening is in 2018 with a friend, I made a satirical video pretending that it was going to run for Amarillo City Council. It was like this lo-fi VHS looking rough video that was like satirical comedy, blasted out audio. And I posted on Facebook, and the local news picked it up and was like, Amarillo man announces city council run.
Without talking to you or knowing that it was a joke.
It was obviously satire, but it was like Amarillo man announces city council run. I was like, oh, okay. They thought it was real. So I did a lot of thinking on it because I was like, I'm from Amarillo and I have a lot of opinions on Amarillo and how it's run and its future. Maybe I could actually do this. So I ran for city council, and a documentary crew from Los Angeles came and filmed the whole thing. And it ended up being shown on PBS. It was like a PBS documentary that aired on PBS, which was wild.
With under the pretense of like, this is satire and this guy's No,
it was a documentary on this is a real run for city council.
Okay.
And it followed me the entire way. Every forum, it filmed me signing up to run, to get on the ballot. It filmed the entire city council run. And I lost the race, obviously. But out of 4 people, I came in second, and I ran on no donations. I didn't take any money. And it was started off as satire. But I came in second, which is pretty unreal because the woman who did win the seat got pretty significant funding for her campaign, and I took $0 to run.
At some point, though, even though you're not taking any money, like you're kissing babies, shaking hands, going to all the functions.
Every single forum. That was a rule of mine. Was I would go to every single forum, because forums, it doesn't matter if you're Republican, Democrat. Forums are just open to any candidate who's running. So I would go to the League of Women Voters Forum. I would go to there was the Amarillo Tea Party Forum, which is like the conservative Tea Party group, and did that forum. Any forum that was open to candidates, I did every single one of them. And in the documentary, you see like at points it could be an absolute train wreck. Because at the Tea Party one, I said I wanted a more progressive city. And afterwards, a guy came up to me and was like, they were really ticked off at you for saying that. And I was like, saying what? And they're like, a more progressive city. And I was like, I just meant more forward thinking. Like, I don't know. Like, I didn't know. Like, it was like a huge deal. But you got to see me in some ways make a fool of myself because I was learning as I was going. I had never run for public office, and I was 24, 25 years old at the time. So it was absolutely a trip. And in the documentary, there's a scene where I talk with Tim Heidecker of Tim and Eric Awesome Show, which tied it into the absurd thing. But it was real. It was like a very real thing. But that's where a lot of my absurd comedy came out, was through that city council run and the videos I made for that campaign, basically.
And now it's just part of you.
Now it's just part of me. Now I just post really ridiculous stuff on Instagram. And most of it was just wearing really stupid outfits in Amarillo or Lubbock. Like, I would wear a trash bag with a cowboy hat in front of a Long John Silver's with a Big Lots shopping cart. It was stuff like that where it's just the dumbest thing I could think up. And it got really crazy for a while. I was definitely going really hard at just the weird Instagram thing,
and you came in second, which is incredible.
Yes. Yeah. Which is nuts. But I think that's what's been strange. It's gotten me a lot of attention for my music. But I was telling you earlier, the weirdness on social media has it's taken some more traditional guitar fans, the traditional guitar audience, longer to realize, like, if you listen to my records, they are hyper traditional records.
Yeah.
They are not out there albums. If anything, the closest thing I could even compare my records to is Windham Hill stuff.
Yeah.
It is very Will Ackerman.
Yeah.
Reverby, soft, hyper melodic. My playing sounds more like Will Ackerman than John Fahey.
Yeah.
Because I really, really like hyper melodic playing. I don't like bluesy scales. I don't use any blues type scales in my music for the most part. So a lot of my influences come from what Will Ackerman did. And Will Ackerman probably is my favorite player as of the last 5 years. His playing has really, really influenced what I do. And the reason why he is so good is, I've always said, no offense to Will Ackerman, and it's weird because they're cousins, but Alex Agrassi is a far more technical player than Will Ackerman.
Sure.
Like, he's very technical and he's a damn good guitar player. So when you listen to Alex Agrassi, then go to Will Ackerman, Will's playing sounds so simple. But when you get into it, Will's writing is better.
Yeah.
Sorry, Alex. I love your music. But Will Ackerman's writing is kind of unparalleled. I think that, like, there's just a small group of guitar players who write that well. And I think it's like Bill Frisell, Pat Metheny, Will Ackerman.
Well, we got to circle back to the whole Gucci thing and Instagram. But while we're on this tangent, like, when you're writing a composition, are you visualizing a story, visualizing a place, or is it just like, I'm playing this chord, this sounds pretty, I'm going to see where it takes me? Like,
yes. Yeah. Basically, the way I play guitar is, if I'm working on a piece, it kind of needs to grab me within 10 minutes in terms of where it's going direction wise. And that's even before the piece is written. I get into tuning. If I like the tuning, I start just moving around the fretboard and just feeling it out, like carving something out of wood. And if I get a sketch I like, then I just stick with that, record it on my iPhone, and flush it out from there. But I never work on multiple songs at once. I can't, like, I have to start a song, finish a song before I can move on to writing another song. So I can only write one single song at a time.
Do you ever scrap them?
Yeah. There's a lot of stuff I do where I'm like, this isn't working, cut it. And that's what was interesting, is my most listened to song on streaming is a 12-string song called Carthage that happened because on my record Letting Go, I had a different song on 12-string, but I thought I was ripping something off, but I couldn't find what it was I was ripping off. So I scrapped it and wrote Carthage due to that song getting cut, and I might not have been ripping something off. I don't know, but I was nervous enough to know if you think you're ripping something off, there's a good chance you are. So it's better to just scrap it and write something new.
Yeah.
So that was just a complete new thing.
I think with the new AI technology, you could probably the robots could probably tell you what
they could, but I don't want to know at this point.
But it's not like, oh, this is a song for a former coworker who died, or like, it's not, or an ex-girlfriend. Like, you're not thinking along those lines.
Yeah, no, I never really have like topics when I'm writing the songs. To me, it sounds kind of esoteric, but it very much is feeling. It's like this intangible thing. And I like it like that. It's like chasing this mysterious, shapeless, nameless thing.
Yeah.
And I think it makes better music. If anything, I find the stories in the songs after they're recorded, which is interesting. It's like I find the meaning in them.
Yeah.
Like a spiritual or like personal meaning in them after they're done. But I feel like that's what happens when you write good melodic pieces is don't worry about the context of them. That will come later. It's like the form of, I've said before, like it's a little reductive, but the way I want to write a song is like making a really good chair. It's a very simple task. Like it's the whole thing of like treating art like sports or things like that. In some ways, it is just a purpose of I need to make a good thing. And me and a friend had an argument about it years back because he said I treated music like sports and almost like a consumerist idea of making a product. I'm like, well, I am making a product.
Yeah.
You know, we've all had a cup of coffee or a piece of sushi that has blown our minds and been like, wow, this feels really life affirming right now, having this really good cup of coffee. Music is not any different from that. You're making something as a product, a chair, a cup of coffee that someone will then consume and find meaning in later, including me, the maker of the music. I want to find meaning in it later after it's done. So that's kind of my loose thoughts on how I make music. And I always say, disclaimer, I could be completely wrong. I don't know what I'm talking about.
Well, it speaks to the deadline thing, the Kottke thing of like, I'm going to do this in 6 hours.
Yeah.
Like the deadline. Yeah. I mean, a plumber doesn't get to like have writer's block, as has been said before. Like they have to plumb.
Yeah.
What, have you in your connections? I mean, you're clearly a networker. You've connected with all these great musicians over the years. Have you connected with any of these like, acoustic purist fingerstyle people that you've met? Like any of them, like Leo Kottke or any?
I've never connected with Kottke.
Okay,
but I have. It's interesting. I did send my record to someone on Windham Hill.
Okay.
And I'm not gonna say who.
Okay.
And it wasn't a mean email, but it was interesting. The email, I almost want to read the email without telling y'all.
Please.
Because I'm not gonna.
This is getting interesting.
I'm not gonna expose this person.
Okay.
But I actually think it's really funny if I just read, this is a person who I sent my newest album to.
Okay.
And
I love this. I love that you are pulling up your iPhone.
This was the email.
And okay, yeah, let's hear it.
Hi, Hayden. As you can probably gather, I receive a lot of emails from people wanting me to listen to their work. Your persistence in this case was successful. I had emailed him multiple times before this, just to be clear. I'm going to skip this part because that might expose who the person is.
Okay.
The greatest compliment I can give a competent guitar player is that they have a, quote, voice. You sound like you and you're a competent player. That's step one. You're a fine player. Step two is whether the music has emotional impact. Your music does. Step three is whether the music reveals a singular voice. Yours does. It's a fine recording, Hayden, and one that I will enjoy listening to. That's a rarity. So it was a complimentary email, but there was also a sternness in it that was like, is the music good? Yes, it is fine music. Like it was very kind of stern to the point, but I took it as a major compliment considering it was a big hero of mine. So yeah, I've reached out to a few of my heroes and sent them my music, and you get mixed responses. Like sometimes that hurts, when you send it to a player you look up to and they send you a response that kind of hurts your feelings.
Yeah.
But it's just a part of it. It's just like, I'm sure
you're putting yourself out there.
Yeah. And I'm sure I could show Fahey my music if he was still around, and he probably wouldn't like it, but I wouldn't be offended because I would get it. It's also hard too when it's other guitar players who might be sick of guitar music and are like, I make guitar music, I don't want to listen to that. Yeah. And I totally get that when guitar players don't want to listen to other players' music. But it's been interesting. I just, it's my forwardness, I guess, is just, I want to know what they think of it.
You just need a disclaimer. I was homeschooled at the beginning.
I was homeschooled. I don't.
Please pardon the 12 DMs I'm about to send you.
I don't know how to act right. Yeah.
What happened to your sister? Is she doing some artistic thing too?
No, my sister, she we kind of she's like a mom, like has kids.
Okay.
Like I definitely went the weirder, like oddball path in life. Because even me and my wife, like my wife's sisters, they all have kids. My sister, she has kids. Like we're the only ones who don't have kids. It's like my wife went to school for theater, scenic design, got her master's in that. I do music, and like we're just kind of probably the black sheep, oddballs of the family. They don't treat us like we're the black sheep, but we're definitely the odd ones in the families.
All right. And so now for anyone, not that anyone would have accidentally tuned in at this point, like it's a TV show running on network TV. We've got an outlier in the fingerstyle guitar world who's kind of marching to the beat of his own drummer. Former bank teller, ran for city council?
Yes, city council.
And then what's the Gucci thing?
So the Gucci thing, I walked in Gucci's 100th anniversary fashion show in Los Angeles for their 100th anniversary on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. And the way this happened, this is a completely true story. Anyone can go fact check it on my Instagram and piece together the timeline.
Well, I've seen the footage. Yeah.
It's real. But what happened is I had made a post in Lubbock where a friend took some photos of me in a park, and I pretended that I did a photo shoot with Gucci, and I lied and was like, so stoked to have worked with Gucci on this photo shoot. And it was a lie. Like I didn't work with Gucci. It was just a joke. And after that, I made an Instagram post that was a fake DM of Gucci threatened to sue me. Where I made a fake DM where they were saying, you have stolen some of our ideas we discuss in private, take them down or we will take you to court. Yeah. I pretended they were suing me and I tagged them in it. And then 2 weeks later on Instagram, you have the request folder for message request.
Sure.
Your other folders. So I went in there and there was an account that was like unverified. It was not a verified account. And there was just some guy and he was like, hey, and I'm doing the talent procurement for the Gucci fashion show in Los Angeles. Who should we talk to about you being in the show? And I thought it was a scam. And I was like, okay, this seems like a scam. So I told them to email Mexican Summer. I sent them Mexican Summer's email. And the employee at Mexican Summer emailed me back and said, yeah, this looks like a scam, but I'll send it up to Keith, the head of the label, and he'll look into it. The next day, my phone goes off. Keith at Mexican Summer texted me and said, hey, it's legit. And that's all the text said. So it was an actual offer from Gucci. They had seen my Instagram, I guess my antics of me tagging them, and they cast me in this 100th anniversary fashion show. 2 weeks later, I was in Los Angeles walking in the show. From DM to fashion show was just 2 weeks.
You had never modeled before?
No, nothing.
Not in that world?
No, zero.
Were any of the other people in the 100th anniversary thing like Instagram celebrities or people who weren't in the modeling world?
Well, that's what was weird. It was a lot of models, like legit models, but the talent they had in the show was like Jared Leto, St. Vincent, Phoebe Bridgers. I was like the only not famous musician. Okay. Which is weird. All the other musicians, Steve Lacy, walking out. I was the only not famous musician. I was like, how did I get asked? Because everyone else was famous. That was the talent. The non-model talent in the show were all like Phoebe Bridgers and Steve Lacy were probably the least well-known outside of me, and they're huge. Yeah. So, yeah, it made no sense. I still don't understand it.
And are you like put up in a beautiful hotel and given flowers and get to keep the outfit? Or what do you get out of this?
A lot.
Besides the story.
I got money.
You did? You got paid well.
They did compensate me. Yeah, they were very fair. They were very nice. They were very nice people. Very lovely people. I got to meet the then creative director of Gucci, Alessandra McKayway. That was cool. Yeah. It was the coolest thing I've ever experienced. I'm not gonna lie. It was mind-bending. Artistically, it was genuinely mind-bending.
And then that ends and then you just go back to normal life, or are you still in contact with them? They might loop you in for future things? Or?
I haven't done anything with Gucci since, but I did get to do photos with Eddie Slimane, who's the creative director of Celine. He was the creative director of Dior and Saint Laurent for years. So he's a legend in fashion. And then recently I played some music for an event for Hermès, the French brand. So I'm
you have the craziest life.
Makes no sense.
Out of Texas. I mean, it's like not even Austin or Houston or Dallas too. It's
for solo guitar experimental music world, it's definitely weird, I think.
It's not wild. I mean, didn't the guy who was, I don't know if he was their art director, but the Gucci Ghost guy, wasn't that sort of a similar thing? Like he was making Gucci art that wasn't, and I think did get a cease and desist, and then they hired him.
Most likely they had done a lot of that during that era of Alessandro Michele's Gucci. They cast a lot of weird people, random people. So they were very open-minded on who they would use and stuff. And I'm like 5'10". I'm not tall enough to be a model, but I think they just thought the stuff I was doing was cool. But that's a thing. My entire quote career has been faking something that then turns into a real thing. Because years like 2019 or 18, I had a billboard put up in Amarillo that my favorite director of all time is this director, Harmony Korine. He's my favorite filmmaker of all time. And I had this billboard put up that said, Harmony Korine, please come to Amarillo, Texas. Yeah. And it was off the highway on I-40. The billboard was running. And it ended up, I did get a call from Harmony Korine because of the billboard. So I did get to talk to him on the phone.
And how much did that billboard set you back?
Nothing. I reached out to the guy in Amarillo who owned the billboard company, because he kind of had a reputation for being like slightly trollish locally in the political world. Okay. And I didn't know him very well, but I reached out to him on Facebook and was like, hey, would you put this on a billboard? And he read it and it just showed red. And that was like, oh, I probably just offended this guy. And 3 hours later, he wrote back, he said, yeah, you want a picture on it? And I said, sure. And it was a digital billboard, but it's like a full-size billboard. And literally within days, it was up running on the billboard. So he didn't charge me to put up the billboard.
Okay, so to wrap this up, like what is the next thing you're going to fake that you'll undoubtedly succeed at beyond everyone's expectations?
My death.
Going to end on that?
Yeah.
Okay. That's good. All right, that was my talk with Hayden Pedigo. I kind of felt like I did talking to Daniel Romano, where I wasn't entirely sure how much I should believe, but everything Hayden told me checks out on the internet. So it's all true, folks, believe it or not. Now, go check out his Instagram and all the kooky videos we talked about. Check out his music, and most importantly, have a very happy holidays if I don't speak to you before the big holidays that are coming up.